Welcome, everyone. This is episode 5 of the Service Lounge, and I am your host, Brandon Nixon. And I really just wanted to jump on here before we jumped into this episode and say a huge thank you to everybody who's listened on. As I'm sure many of you guys can understand, launching a brand new podcast just a couple months ago has been nerve-wracking. We've learned a lot. We've got a lot of good feedback, and we can't do it without all of your guys' support. But for those of you who are listening on that may not subscribe to our channels today, I highly encourage pause the video. Go subscribe on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, Apple Podcast, Spotify, wherever you get your information. We're going to meet you there. So definitely go subscribe, hit that bell so you get notifications anytime we release new content. But again, just want to say thank you, and as well encourage all of you guys, if you have feedback or would like to be featured on future episodes, definitely reach out to us. We're planning our upcoming year with new episodes and new content. So if you guys would like to be on here or collaborate, we'd love to have you. So again, I will not delay this too much as we have an amazing episode coming up. But without further ado, let's jump into the Service Lounge. Welcome, everyone. This is episode 5 of the Service Lounge. I'm your host, Brandon Nixon, and today we have some very special guests with us. Of course, as always, my co-host, Christian Egan, on the call with me. Christian, how you doing?
Good, man. How are you doing today?
Good.
And like you said, we have a very special guest. We have Kenny Warren from TM&A. Kenny, how are you doing today?
Doing all right. How you guys doing?
Good.
Doing great. Happy Friday.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Happy Friday. Yeah, no kidding.
Well, Kenny, I really appreciate you taking the time and going through this with us. You are officially our first OEM perspective on the podcast. As I'm sure you've seen with our podcast, we've been really focusing on the customer experience. So for those of the people who are on the call who may not know who you are, Kenny, do you mind starting off? Just give a quick background, who you are, your experience with Toyota and Lexus. What does that look like?
Absolutely. So Kenny Warren, Senior Manager, Smart Path Monogram Service. I have been with Toyota / Lexus for over 33 years. So I've got a couple of years under my belt in the automotive industry. And I've probably about half my career has been spent on the fixed operations side. I did spend about 11 years in the Lexus Southern area overseeing fixed operations for Lexus in the southeastern part of the United States. And I've been involved in the Smart Path Monogram program literally since day one, since we had the first conversation about even developing this platform. So it's been a great ride.
Yeah, well, it's been a journey. It's been great working with you over the years and seeing Toyota and Lexus develop the platform, and also getting your perspective with your past experience working out there in the field and taking it into a new program coming into the dealership. So yeah, again, Kenny, just want to say thank you and looking forward to going through here today.
Yeah, absolutely.
So one of the first questions I got for you, Kenny, obviously a lot of people have heard about Smart Path Monogram on sales, right? But not many people have heard about Smart Path or Monogram on the service side of it. And for those of you who haven't heard about Smart Path or Monogram, Smart Path and Monogram on sales is really the digital side of transacting on a sale on the front end of the house and transitioning that over into the service side. The sales side, Kenny, Toyota and Lexus developed that on their own. With the service side, you guys have actually looked at third-party partners. Can you kind of explain what was the vision there with Toyota and Lexus of actually working with third-party partners and not developing it directly on your own?
Yeah, as you all know, it's a huge undertaking to try to develop a program like this, software, everything involved with it. And we realized that there was a real need for us to really improve the guest experience. Ultimately, our goal is to improve retention for both Toyota and Lexus brands. But, we also see the changing demographics in the United States with, baby boomers, Gen Xers getting older, and we see millennial and, Gen Ys coming in. And we felt that we really needed to get a platform out to the market that would help cater to not only our traditional Toyota and Lexus guests, but to, the new guests that are coming up in the, buying cars now. So, part of it was in the interest of time, but we also recognize that, people like Update Promise, and we also have Dealer Effects, CDK, and Rentals that we work with, but we also understand that they already had platforms that were out there that we felt were the best in the industry. And we also didn't necessarily want to get our dealers boxed into one single platform. So we felt it was best in our best interest to get something to the market while allowing our dealers the flexibility to choose a platform that they felt best fit their needs.
Yeah, no, I think that's an amazing approach. Over the years, personally, we've been a part of other OEM programs as well. And typically when we see OEMs provide options to the stores, you start to get better adoptions, right? When stores feel like you said, they're boxed into one certain platform or program, they tend to not, utilize. You get one person who's got an opinion about it, and then utilization drops. So one thing you mentioned there that I wanted to ask to start off with is transforming that customer experience. We today mainly are going to be focusing on like the inspection part of it, the digital MPI, the videos and photos. Well, what would you say with SmartPath and Monogram is the forefront? I know you mentioned retention, but what's the forefront of focus when bringing on a new dealership who may already think that they're doing well in their service process? Why are they going to want to go to SmartPath or Monogram at that point?
What we have found over the last 2.5 years we've been launching dealers is that what SmartPath Monogram does is takes a dealer that already has good processes and makes them even better.
Yeah.
And overall, I mean, it's at the end of the day, it's about the guest experience. And we just feel that between greeting the guest in kind of their own environment with their vehicle, with a tablet, and building that trust and transparency with the electronic MPI and video, we just felt that that was the next way for us to just kind of elevate the guest experience. If you think about fixed operations, there really hasn't been any change in the last, 30 years, maybe even more than that. I mean, we've gone from handwriting ROs to sitting down to the desktop computer, and there's no question that this is the next iteration of service. So to be able to be on the forefront of that also was really fantastic for us to be able to do.
Kenny, what would you say are some of the benefits that you're hearing from dealers that they're having with customer retention, profit, all that sort of stuff? What would you say are the main things that dealers are giving you feedback on when they're having success with SmartPath and Monogram?
So what we're finding, the dealers that utilize the platform the way it was designed to be used and uses it the way we train them to use it, they're getting the highest return on the investment. Yep. So right now, the average SmartPath dealer that's been on the program for a year is seeing about a 10% increase in CP revenue. But our top 10% dealers, those are the dealers that are utilizing the platform exactly the way that we designed it to be used. They're seeing upwards of 25% increase. And also, we are having guests call into the dealership to talk to their service consultant. If they don't get the video, they're calling the consultant to find out where the video is. So you know when that's happening, you're doing something big and doing something really different, and you're really exceeding the guest expectations.
Well, and that ties to things that Christian and I have talked about in other, episodes, is getting that customer to be the forefront will drive more utilization at the store, right? When you have customers, like you said, calling into the dealership saying, hey, I didn't get a video, what's going on, right? So I know videos are really the center of where a lot of the dealers are seeing the return on the program. Videos and photos, getting those out and really showing that transparency to the customer. What have you seen? Because I know you're not only dealing with us as a partner, but you're dealing with other, providers. What have you seen has been the biggest pushback on that aspect of the program? Stores that maybe are struggling to launch out videos and photos even after they launch and get adoption there. What's been some of the main pushback that you're seeing out there in the field?
We've all been doing this long enough to know the technicians aren't really they're not those guys that are going to really be out there putting themselves out there too much. And it's just I think it's probably the unknown. Yeah. When you start talking to a technician about doing a video, they think that they're going to be the centerpiece of the video. And one of the things that we focus on when we launch is to make sure that they understand, hey, the car is the star, not you. All you're doing is narrating what you're seeing. And that is the biggest pushback, is getting techs to do videos. But all you need are 1 or 2 technicians in your shop that are willing to try it.
Yep.
And as soon as the tech does 2 or 3 videos, they realize it's not that big of a deal. So usually by the end of launch week, we've got most of the shop pretty much on board doing videos. And that's another cool thing for us to see, right? When you see somebody coming from, there's no way I'm going to do that, to the quality of video that they actually produce, it's just amazing to see that.
Yeah, that's great.
We talk about it, Brandon, where sometimes we have, Kenny, we've come up with like our pillars, right? And you guys have metrics that you're measuring the dealers on. And sometimes we're amazed with how quickly these dealers, the technicians, advisors are adapting, especially during training week, right? We have dealers that are hitting above 90% on a lot of the metrics after just 3 or 4 days of training.
Right.
Well, and I think too, hearing from the customers and how they're responding when they get it, right? I can't tell you how many times that we've heard from service managers or even owners that'll just walk out into the waiting room. And next thing you know, a customer's stopping them going like, hey, I don't know what you guys are doing, but this new process is pretty cool, right? And we've even seen, like, I grabbed actually a comment from a customer on here that laid out, and I know we've talked about some of these, but this was one comment that came from yesterday from a SmartPath store where they said, I hadn't been to the dealership in quite some time. I love the improvements. Got a video, and the process from start to finish was as simple as possible. I'm always coming back. So that's what we're looking for when, and that's our vision, is if we can get more customers leaning that way where they're seeing the new process, they're going to want to come back to the dealership, right?
Yeah, 100%. That's exactly, I mean, long term for us, that strategic plan is for us to improve retention. And the single best way to do that is just improving trust and transparency between the guest and the dealership. And that's why we started SmartPath Sales.
Yep.
And, it's just a logical transformation to go from sales into service. So that's kind of why we've done it.
Now, have you guys seen that stores that have adopted the new SmartPath sales process are typically the ones that are wanting to adopt the service process? Or are you guys getting a good mix of people who aren't even on SmartPath sales that are looking at SmartPath service? What's that looking like?
We've actually got a good mix of the two. You would think that the early adopters for sales would have been the early adopters for service.
Yeah.
And you would think also a dealer that was, progressive enough to want to do this in service, we want to do it in sales. But we really see we're probably at we have about 275 dealers live right now. I think just over half of those are on sales and service.
Yeah.
So we do see a pretty good mix, really.
That's awesome. So I'm going to go to a tough question here, which I think you're going to be great to answer on this, because I like to not just give a bunch of positives, right? With any program, there's stores that jump on and jump off, right? Where it's just not a good fit, or for whatever reason, they hop off the program. What would you say would be one of the top reasons that you're hearing out across all the providers of somebody who maybe jumped on SmartPath service, but then they maybe hopped off the program down the line? What would be some of the main reasons that you see?
It has to do the vast majority of the time with just lack of buy-in from the team members. We have had team members during launch week at a dealership go so far as to unplug internet photos to make the system crash. So the setup is really important in the beginning. I know it's funny, isn't it? I can't believe that would happen.
We laugh because we're the ones that experienced that.
But if you think about that, it is so critical that you can't just be a service manager, service director, or general manager of a dealership and say, this is what we're going to do. You've really got to spend the time beforehand to get your team on board.
Yep.
And once you get them on board, you have to hold everybody accountable, because I think, to me, the videos are the single most important part of the platform, in my opinion. But almost as important as that is having the service consultant actually send the video and the MPI to the guest.
Yep.
So, you'd be surprised how often we have a situation where tech spends the time doing the MPI and the video, and then the consultant falls back to their old way of doing business and doesn't even bother to send the video along. So that's probably my biggest frustration right there when I see that.
So I've got a statistic, Christian, before you jump in, because I pulled a statistic and you actually leaned right into it. So give you guys a couple numbers for who are on the call or on the podcast listening in. MPIs that are just completed this is for 2 locations. For one of the locations, just by completing an MPI, they're closing on average $409 per repair order. When they actually have a customer viewing it, that's closing at $483. That's one of the locations. The second location is at $389 when they complete it. And when the customer views it, $442 is what they're at. So to your point, that's a significant increase. It's not just about doing the MPI. You got to get the customer to view it, right? Yeah. So So I'll ask a question on that. How have you seen to get more customers bought into that process? What sort of training techniques have you seen dealers use to get customers to view it more than they typically are?
Well, the setup happens on the service drive, first of all. The guest has to know that they're going to be going through a different process than when they were at the dealership last time. And the best way to set the guest up is to make sure that you can, on the service drive, when they get that first welcome text, have them actually click on the link on the text to open up the text so they know what they're going to be seeing. And then you let them know that the next text you're going to get is most likely going to be an electronic MPI along with the video from the technician, so you can see exactly what the technician is seeing on your vehicle. Yeah. And we also prescribe it's really important whether the guest is a waiter or whether they are leaving the dealership, the same process needs to happen. So even if you have it, right, yeah, you send the video, you wait 2 or 3 minutes, go into the lounge and say, hey, have you had a chance to look at the video yet? No, I really haven't. Well, hey, let's go ahead and take a look at it. I think you're really going to enjoy it. And follow the same process and condition the guest to watch the video whether they're a waiter or whether they're not a waiter. I think is probably one of the best things that any dealer can do to improve customer view rate.
Yeah, I think that's a huge takeaway because we've, Christian, your implementation team's seen it. We've seen it, that getting that service advisor to realize like, okay, I know they're right over there, but still send it. Because then to even protecting the store 2 months later, when they declined work, you at least have shown them, because you sent it to them, that it's okay, everything's declined based off your tires or brakes. If something happens, you're also covering yourself as a dealership. But if you don't send it, you don't have that opportunity to show that you even recommended that work.
Yeah. We want the advisors to follow the same process. We want the techs to follow the same process, parts to follow the same process. And on the consumer end or the customer end, we want them to get the same process every time they come in, no matter what vehicle, right? When they come in or who their advisor is. So I think that's huge. And it's hard to sometimes get everyone to do that all the time, right? Oh, it's a new vehicle. I don't need to send the MPI, or I don't need to make a video. But the key is the consumer experience benefits from it when the process is followed time after time. And like you said earlier, Kenny, right? The customers come to expect their mobile MPI, their electronic payment link, and their video in their glove box. And if they don't get that, they either are concerned or they'll bring it up saying, hey, why didn't I get it this time?
Yeah, I would much rather, if I'm a service director at a dealership, I would much rather have my consultant calling the guests and thanking them for their business after the guest has approved everything electronically after seeing the video. Yeah. I'd rather have that be a thank you phone call versus a sales phone call, and give the guests an update on, when their car is going to be ready for them to pick up at the end of the day.
So I think this also ties to what Gino had said on our last episode. So Gino Walsh was on our last episode from Cavalli Auto Group. And one thing he mentioned is now with having these sorts of platforms like SmartPath Monogram and tools like Update Promise in the service department, I can take somebody who's never written service from a BDC department and bring them in and teach them how to write service and be a good service advisor fairly quickly, right? And to your point, Kenny, now we're not telling them, hey, pick up the phone and try to sell. Send them the video. And when they get it and they approve it, give them a thank you, show that you care and you really appreciate that they went through that process. It opens up the field of talent for service a lot more than typically what we've seen over the years.
Yeah, absolutely it does. And that's one thing that we have found that, when we do transition a new consultant in, they ramp up a lot faster on the platform than if they didn't have SmartPath.
Yeah, that's a good takeaway. Good takeaway. All right, so I've got another hard question. I like asking hard questions for you.
Okay, good.
You've been with Toyota and Lexus for a very long time. SmartPath and Monogram isn't the first program that Toyota and Lexus has brought forward regarding service, right? There's been other programs that they've done over the years. Oftentimes we hear from dealers all the time, and we get mixed feedback, but it's an OEM program coming out. Yeah, I'm not even looking at the OEM programs. I'm just doing what I've got going on. How have you set SmartPath and Monogram, apart from that misconception that, it's another OEM program? I'm not looking at it. It's not something I want to, jump on.
Man, that is a tough question. You know what? We're pretty lucky, I guess, with having both Toyota and Lexus brands.
Yeah.
Our relationship with our dealers is without question the best in the industry. Yeah. And our dealers really trust us when we come up with a platform like this. They actually trust that we've done our due diligence, and the fact that I think we can prove that out just simply by us having offered the 4 business partners that we have.
Yeah.
We're not telling the dealer what they have to do. And that's another thing. We're not forcing any dealers to get on the SmartPath Monogram service platform. It is 100% dealers raising their hand and wanting to get involved. So I think that in itself speaks to the quality that we've been able to put together with Update Promise and everybody. And our dealers know that what we have done is the right thing. And they also know we're going to continue to improve it as time goes on.
Yeah, and I'll mention too, one thing that isn't it can be assumed, but it's not always pointed out. Not only are you guys not forcing people to jump on the program, but you're not financially incentivizing the dealers to jump on it. And you're still getting a bunch of dealers raising their hands saying, hey, we want to transform our service department and do what you guys are doing, which just goes to show, to your point, the dealers that are on it are getting the result. That's why they're hopping on, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And, and as we get more dealers on board, we're getting more and more positive feedback from dealer 20 groups and whatnot, where they're starting to recognize really how successful a dealer can be by hopping on the platform. So, I think what we have done is, it's not very often you're able to be on the ground floor changing the industry, but I really, truly believe that that's what we're doing today.
Yeah. So, Kenny, I want to go back to obviously MPIs, electronic MPIs and videos is you said the main thing, or one of the main things of SmartPath and Monogram. The other thing though, that I think is huge, right? And we struggled with it at first with a lot of dealers, is the upfront pricing, right? And being transparent with pricing on the widget and when the customer comes in. So can you talk a little bit of what you've seen on the shift in that? And like I said, early on, it was a struggle for a lot of dealers, right? They didn't want to put pricing on the website, or, they didn't want to put VIN specific pricing. But we're seeing success with that now. And it's helping customers schedule appointments easier and make more informed decisions as well. Yeah.
So what we've seen since, in the last, 2.5 years, I guess we've been working on this program, is we've seen dealers go from, so we require factory recommended maintenance as one of the options for the guest. And you all remember when we first were launching dealers, they were wanting factory recommended and then good, better, best for the dealer and all that. And we didn't really restrict the dealers too much to do that, but it didn't take them very long to realize that they really don't need anything but factory recommended, because ultimately what you want is whatever the price the guest sees on the scheduler, you want them to see that on the service drive.
Yep.
And let the consultants do their job when they get there. If you want to upsell a guest to a, more comprehensive maintenance package than what we recommend, that's fine, but let that happen on the service drive naturally, which is where it should anyway.
Yeah. Well, and you bring up a good point, because we've seen it too. I will say I was even a skeptic of like, oh, wow, Toyota and Lexus is really pushing, we have to have pricing on the online scheduler for the customers, right? And we know over the years, so many dealers were not putting that up because they just didn't want to make it as a roadblock for customers to show up. And the data we saw was right when that happened, a year later, show rates are tremendously higher, like 4 to 5% higher today, with everybody displaying pricing compared to people who aren't displaying pricing. So I think that's a takeaway for anybody who's listening on. No matter what brand you are, if you're not displaying pricing on your online widget, you're feeding into that misconception that dealers are too expensive, they're untrustworthy, I don't want to get in there. You're feeding into that. But by displaying it, you're building trust right off the bat without a human even interacting.
We're seeing customers when they come into, it's a lot more seamless on write up and stuff, right? Because they're not shocked with prices, or, hey, what is my total? I thought it was going to be this and now it's this. So it's more seamless for everyone involved.
Yeah. I think one of the biggest concerns when a dealer has to put pricing on their website, they're worried that a guest is going to see that price and they're going to abandon the scheduler. But to your point, Brandon, we're absolutely not seeing that. We are seeing super high click-through rates, and there's so much information out there nowadays that there's no way you can't have pricing on your website. You just absolutely got to have it out there.
So Kenny, let me ask you, as we're talking about scheduling, I know we're mainly talking about MPIs and the results we're seeing, but I think it's important to talk about scheduling, because, and the reason I bring it up is it's still today the number one complaint from customers is wait times, that appointments aren't really appointments, and scheduling has been a pain. So can you share with people who are listening on, what's Toyota and Lexus doing with your new initiative of transforming the online scheduling widget for all the providers? Can you share some of that information you guys are doing?
Yeah, first and foremost, we want to make sure that the schedulers that we have for the guest facing side of it are the most intuitive, easiest for the guest to use in the industry, because, simple is better when it comes to a scheduler. And then we're also on the back end wanting to get the back end side of the schedulers a little bit more robust, to where a dealer can actually divide their shop up between express and main. Yep. And be able to book by hours available versus just appointments available. And, it's the age old story. A dealer is slammed in the morning and they can't get through everybody in the morning, and everybody's twiddling their thumbs at 3:00 in the afternoon. Well, trying to get them to spread that load throughout the day also is something we're going to be focusing on a little bit more as well, to make sure that if a guest has an 8:00 appointment, they're going to get greeted and written up at 8:00, not 8:15.
So this brings me back to our first launch that we did with SmartPath Monogram. It was a Toyota store down in San Diego. And Kenny, I think you were a part of that when we got feedback from the GM that you are not going to solve my 8 a.m. line out down the street and then the rest of the day being slow. How was that experience, 2-3 months later, when it was like, oh, wow, we actually made that change, right?
Absolutely. And you all, there's another dealer that you all launched up in Iowa that I remember, one of the early adopters as well. They were having a hard time getting their cars off the service drive. It's because they didn't have a process on the backside of getting the cars off the drive and parked on the lot anywhere. And, we were able to streamline that process, where we started getting the cars flowing off the service drive, reduce the amount of time where the technicians had to go try to find vehicles, because we started having them park them in certain sections of the lot. So, we go a lot deeper when we launch a dealership. We go deeper than just the platform. We look at the dealer's processes to make sure that if there's any processes that need to be improved, that we're part of that too, to help them work their way through that, just like the same dealer down in San Diego.
Well, yeah, I still remember, didn't we have a dealership where they painted new lines in the service drive to direct the customers, right? We came back a couple months later, we were like, hey, maybe if we paint the lines differently, and they did it, right? Yeah. They painted new lines in the service drive to direct the cars in the right way. I love it.
Yeah, and that's another cool part about, what we're doing. I mean, we're not only introducing this phenomenal platform to our dealers and our guests, but our dealers are realizing there are better ways for them to operate their business, become more efficient. So it's been a lot of fun.
Awesome. Well, we're about to wrap up here. I'm really trying to make sure that we get the great bits of information out of you, Kenny. So I will ask, any last thoughts that you can provide to any dealerships that are trying to improve their service department, no matter their brand, their OEM, does not matter. What have you seen over your experience, your 20 plus years of experience out there? Any words of advice you can provide to our listeners?
You know what? I think what it boils down to is, no matter what you're doing at your dealership, you have got to spend the time to get your team on board with what you want to do. Share the strategic vision with them so that they understand what your long-term goals are, not only for the dealership, but for them. Because there are not very many people that go into a dealership that want to be a service consultant for 30 years.
Yeah.
So they're going to want to be able to expand their knowledge base. They're going to want to be able to learn and grow within, hopefully, that same dealer organization. So I think for me, it's just really about getting your team on board, making sure that you are, shepherding the process with them, getting them involved in some of the decisions that you're making, and just get them to buy into what you want to, achieve long term.
I love it. Yeah. I love it. You got to get the buy-in, and it all starts with that captain of the ship, right? If they see you, being able to turn the ship, you got to have the whole crew to do it. So we got to get the buy-in there. Well, Kenny, we really appreciate you jumping on. It's a lot of great information. And if anybody, is looking to learn a little bit more about SmartPath Monogram, Kenny's definitely a great resource. No matter what provider you're looking at, whether it's us or one of the other providers, definitely reach out to myself or Kenny, and we can help you guys out with this. But again, Kenny, really appreciate you taking the time here today.
Sure thing. My pleasure,
Thank you,
guys.
Kenny.
Always a pleasure.
All right.
All right.
Appreciate everybody listening on, and hope everybody has a great rest of their Friday. And Kenny, we'll see you soon. Thanks again.
Have a great weekend, guys.
Thanks, guys.